tonight. And so, brother, come on up. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, it's good to be here again. I was thinking about this verse I want to share with you. In First Corinthians, the 16th chapter, listen to what Paul's talking about. This is Paul on his missionary journeys, right? And he's getting ready to go here and there and everywhere. And he said, I have to get my bifocals adjusted here so I'm looking at the right part. Maybe. Okay, wait just a minute now. Somebody moved my verse. Okay, here it is. Sorry. For I do not wish to see you now just in passing, for I hope to remain with you for some time, if the Lord permits. Right? So far, so good. Then he said, but I will remain in Ephesus until Pentecost, for a wide door for effective service has opened to me, and there are many adversaries. And I was thinking about that because I sort of, on a smaller way, can understand, can empathize with the Apostle Paul, because he's saying he really wants to plan. He really wants to say, here's my plan. And he has a plan. He's got it all mapped out, and this is what his plan is to do. And then he says, but I'm not sure if we can do that, so maybe I'll stay here for a little while longer, and if the Lord permits, and if that door opens, then we'll go there. But this is what I want to do, because there is an effective door for service. And then he adds this other note to it, and there are many adversaries. Now, I don't know about the adversaries part going to Uganda, but we did run across some obstacles, and that's what Pastor was just mentioning about. I think most of you know something about that or have heard something about that. So, but I made a list of some things I want. Usually when I come down, I show you some pictures. I don't have any pictures because we didn't go over there and get any. So, but I want to give you an update on what's going on with Hope and Mercy Mission. And first let me say thank you for Pastor, you and all of you for your regular support for Hope and Mercy Mission. We really appreciate that a great deal, and especially in these days, in the last couple of years, our support base has kind of gone up and down, just because a lot of churches are really having some struggles in recovering from the whole COVID thing and all that sort of thing. I suppose that's a whole lot of it. Some have been unable to continue and so forth, but always just having that support come from here just really is appreciated. We appreciate that very much, that very generous and faithful support. And so having said that, thank you for that. I want to maybe take a minute and remind you how Hope and Mercy Mission, our mission to Uganda, how that is supported. And there's a couple of things about that I really want to emphasize, partly because of some of the things I want to share with you after that. But so when anyone sends money to Hope and Mercy Mission, it all goes to the mission. It all goes to Uganda. We're fortunate and blessed by the Lord in this sense that we don't have to take any portion of that out for overhead expenses. It's always difficult for any I think for any mission organization, there are all kinds of expenses that have to be dealt with, like in the home office sort of a thing, and a certain percentage of support that comes in generally to a mission, you have to take part of that out to pay those expenses, and then the rest of it goes overseas or wherever the mission is working. We don't do that. What we do is everything that comes in, the money that you send every month, that money goes to Uganda, and it goes into the ministry over there completely. We don't take any percentage of that out for anything else. We have a director for the mission who happens to be me, who doesn't get paid. So, and nor do I want to or need to. But just to give you an idea, we've just recently, about a year ago now, we have put on staff at the church an administrative assistant who also helps us with a lot of the stuff for Hope and Mercy Mission. But our church takes care of that, so again, we don't have to use any of the funds for that. So we're very thankful that all the money that comes in for Hope and Mercy Mission can go right into the work. And that's been real important, and it's real important to me to be able to say that and be able to do that. But I like to let people know about that. So this last time we were planning to go, we would have just been coming back. In fact, when I talked to Pastor earlier, quite a few months ago, I guess it was. Anyway, we were talking and thought this would work out really well for me to come here because we'd just be getting back from Uganda, so we'd have a fresh report and neat pictures and all that sort of thing to show you. But we weren't able to go because in Uganda there was an Ebola outbreak. I don't know if you're familiar with Ebola. It's a nasty disease, and there's no cure for it. There's really no treatment for it other than treating some of the symptoms. But it's pretty dangerous, once it spreads, it's hard to contain it. Where have you heard this story before? But it is anyway. So, and it's not a new thing. It's been around for a while, but not in Uganda. And so they had several cases. I think at the first notice that we got, there were like 15 or 16 cases of Ebola in the country of Uganda, and that's a pretty good-sized country, a big population. So it wasn't too concerning. And it was clear over on the other part of the country. So, you know, when you hear there's this in Uganda, right away you start thinking, oh no. But, you know, that's like saying it was in the Midwest here or something. But anyway, it spread, not a lot, but it spread to several different districts. The last report that I saw, I think there were 147 cases in the country. There were a couple of them in Kampala, which is the big city, which is we go through. We don't really spend much time there. And so we're trying to decide when we're getting ready to go about what we should do about that. And add to that the fact that when we first started going, we had complications trying to arrange the date for our travel. Then we booked airline tickets, and then the airlines changed our tickets. And boy, airline travel these days is not the same as it was a couple years ago. And so we had to make adjustments, and then the airlines changed the dates for us. Well, that didn't work. So we had to cancel those flights, and the airline said, yeah, we can cancel it, we'll give your money back, but there's like a $300 fee for each ticket in order to make a change. And details aren't too important, but it was a nightmare and the whole thing. So we ended up booking our travel. We couldn't get our whole team on the same flight. And so we ended up with Zach and 3 others on a flight with Qatar Airlines, and the rest of us were going with Delta and KLM, and they were going to, I don't even remember where you were going. I think you were going to end up in Uganda, right? So coming back, we weren't really sure, but anyway, they were going all over the place on different airline and everything, and then that didn't work out. So all these complications kept coming, and I say that just to give you a feel for when it comes to planning the trip. We have all these kind of things to try to work through. So we have to deal with the airlines, and then we have to deal with everybody's schedule and try to be as much as we can around people's work schedules. And some people have to take their vacation time to go, and other people have to convince their boss that it's okay for them to go, which I think was Zach's problem. He said his boss is really hard to get along with. But
I can vouch for that.
you can vouch. So anyway, so anyway, with all those complications and that sort of thing going on, we finally decided we're just going to pull the plug on the whole thing and salvage what we can to get as much money back as we could from the airlines and so forth. And so the biggest problem we ran into was the CDC, our CDC, said that they put it up to a level 3, which means if we go to Uganda, coming back from Uganda into this country at a level 3, that we would have had to go to one of 5 airports. So usually we fly into Boston coming back. This time we would have had to go to, I can't remember, Atlanta, Detroit, New York, 2 airports in New York, and one other one that I can't remember off the top of my head, none of which I wanted to go to, but we would have had to go to one of those airports, and then we would have to go through intensive screening and testing. And if we had any symptoms, then we ran into a whole nother problem. And this was the confusing part. The CDC said they do the testing and screening for Ebola, but apparently that testing and that screening isn't very definite. And so as a result of that, they say if you have any symptoms, and the symptoms are, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but the symptoms are like if you get COVID or a cold. It's hard to differentiate depending on how severe it is for each individual. So if we had any symptoms that they thought could be Ebola, they'd keep us there for 21 days in quarantine at one of those 5 places, and so at our own expense. And so we just finally decided we can't take that kind of risk with our team. If they move it to a level 4, which was right on the edge, if they moved it to a level 4, then there's no entry into the United States from Uganda. So we would have a lot more time for ministry there, I guess. But so anyway, so all that to say, we postponed the trip. I don't like to say canceled it. So what our plans are now is to go again in March. I usually go in March anyway, or sometime in the spring, because our Bible school over there that we have has the graduation in the spring, and usually it's the first week in March. So as of right now, that's what we're looking at for the next trip, sometime right around that period of time. But it was confusing, and it was a real eye-opener for me and for the others, just thinking about how committed are we, because it tests every step of that, tests your commitment. And then you have to think through, should I just persevere, or do you keep pushing against? And like Paul said, and there are many adversaries. There are many adversaries, or I'll use the word opposition. There's a lot, or obstacles rather, and there is a great effective door for service that's open. So which do you focus on the most, and which one weighs the most was a real challenge for us. But so we plan at this point anyway to go in March and see what we can do there. So that's why I don't have up-to-date pictures to share with you. I do have some information to tell you what's going on over there. So let me go to that. So let's talk about the different ministries that are over there in Uganda, right? And let me say quickly, they're still going on. None of that over there stopped. They had to make some adjustments and so forth. By the way, can you imagine, difficult as it is for us to get everybody on the phone or in the same room or on Zoom or something, everybody at the same time to make plans and so forth. Imagine doing that over there where, you get on the back of a boda or something and go from one village to the other to try to connect with everybody, because we have 7 different alliances of pastors now, about just a little over 300 pastors that we work with over there. So with all of those pastors in those churches trying to get them together, so we had planned, here's what we'll do. Because we hadn't been there for so long, what we decided we would do is we would take 2 alliances, the closest 2 together, have them all gather in one place, and we'd have a 2-day conference for those pastors. Then the next 2 days we would do another one, and then that left out Gombo, which is the furthest one away. We would do that one, probably to spend, I think we figured we could get a day and a half with them. But so all of that communication that we had been working on to get word out to everybody, and then they had to get word back to everybody saying, nope, we're not going to do that. And I'm still getting messages from pastors who are able to get on, either send a text message or on the internet somehow. Some of them are able to do that about once a month or something. And every once in a while I still get these messages from them saying, we're really looking forward to you being there. November's almost over. Sorry, we're not. So anyway, but that's what's been going on. So speaking of the pastors, Faith Bible School is one of our ministries. It's the one that's, I don't know if you could say one that's more dear to my heart than others, but that one is just is really an exciting ministry, and I love working with the pastors in the Bible school. We have the pastors, all the students in the Bible school are either ministry leaders or pastors who are actively serving in a local church, and they come the first week of every month. They come to the school. We house them, they sleep there, we feed them, do all of that, and they stay the whole week, and they go to classes all day. We just got electricity in the village, can you imagine? So they just got electricity in the village, so now they have light bulbs. If you had a building like this, you'd probably have 2 light bulbs, but still you have light bulbs, right? So then they decided that they don't have to go to bed so early. It gets dark, they can turn on a light, and they decided they wanted to have some classes at night too. And so they wanted to make the most of that whole week that they had. And so that's what they've been doing. But so we have in March, we will have another graduation. We have currently 30 students, because our maximum capacity in the Bible school is 30 students. We have 15 of them, they're in their first year, 15 are in their second year. So they go the first week of every month, and they do that for 2 years. And then they're ready to graduate. So in March, Lord willing, we'll graduate another 15 of those pastors will get their diploma and graduate from the Bible school. And have I shown you pictures of the graduation before? It's just an amazing thing to watch, because let's see if I can describe this for you. Drive out through these coffee plantations and banana plantations and so forth, and you feel like you're just getting further and further away from anything remotely civilized, and all of a sudden you come around a corner, and here's what we used to call it our compound, but that has some negative connotation, so we don't call it that anymore. But we get around to that place, and this is where the guest house is, and where the Sunrise School and the Bible School and everything. And all of a sudden you come around the corner, and here's these beautiful buildings right out in the middle of nowhere. And I say they're beautiful buildings, and they really are, but by our standards, not so much, you know. But anyway, so in the middle of that, here they come. The students come for graduation, the current students, the ones that are graduating, and we had to limit them that each graduate could only bring 5 people, because they would bring their whole church would come to see their pastor graduate. And not that we mind that, but they come from a long ways away, and they're there for a long time, and so we have to feed them and all of that. We just don't have the means to do quite that much. But they sing and they dance and they dress up in robes, and they get robes and they make hats like graduates, and they do all of that. They make their own, or they find them, and now they have some women in the village that know how to sew those. So every year they sew graduation gowns and caps and everything and these pastors dress up in those, and they come in a big long line, so everybody's sitting around. Am I spending too much time on that? We got a lot of ground to cover, but this is just fun. I'm picturing this, remembering this. We sit there and we're waiting under these great big tents, right? And the graduates come from down there, probably 100 yards away, is where the Bible school is. And they come in a single line, all the way up. And you hear them coming because they're singing. And they just work their way up, and they're dancing and they're singing as they make their way up and up into their seats, and they sit down. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful event. And they just make the most of it. So anyway, I digress as usual. I do a lot of that. We already have graduated now about 60, I think, pastors who have been through the Bible school. This March will be another 30, so that will bring us to about 90. Now, probably out of the 90, I'd say there's 85 of them that are pastors, and then there are a couple of other exceptions that we make. We have a couple of women who graduated from the Bible school who do ministry to the women either in their church or among all the churches. And we have one woman who, bless her heart, her husband started coming to Bible school, and he didn't know how to read. And so we're trying to teach him how to read, but he couldn't keep up with learning to read and with the studies. And the studies are actually quite comprehensive. And so he asked if his wife could come with him to school, and she would listen, and she would take notes, and then she would read the reading assignment to him and so forth. And so we gave her a diploma as well. 2 years she did that. Can you imagine? I mean, she sat next to him in class and did all the things that needed to be done. And so everything that he couldn't write down, she would take notes and read them back to him. And it just, anyway, give you an idea of the level of their commitment to all of that. So anyway, that's Faith Bible School. And those pastors are just an incredible blessing to see how much they appreciate. And keep in mind that they go through each book of the Bible. We have a Bible survey class where they go through every book of the Bible. They have a theology class where they cover all the 8 basic areas of theology. They have a spiritual growth class where they have to work for their own personal spiritual growth, spiritual disciplines. They have a hermeneutics class. And they do all of these same courses that you would expect here. And all of those have been translated into their language, and they learn all of those things. But you know what they do? They take what they learn in Bible school that week, and guess what they're doing in church on Sundays when they go back? Every Sunday they go back and they're teaching their people what they learned that week in school. So we're hoping that in a very short period of time, a lot of people in those churches are going to be very, very well educated. So, but Faith Bible School is still going on. Pastors, the 4 of the first pastors that we started working with, boy, it's been 11 or 12 years now. 4 of the first group that I started working with are now teachers at the Bible school. And my nephew and I wrote all the curriculum for the Bible school, and we've had it translated into their language, and they do a wonderful, wonderful work of teaching all of that. So it's just a lot of exciting things that go on with Faith Bible School. They have their classroom experience, and then they go with the teachers. During the week, they go out and they've decided themselves that they ask if they could stay on Saturday, that last Saturday, if they could stay there and have their teachers go with them, and they go out into the villages and they do open air evangelism and they practice preaching. And so different ones will go out and the teachers will assign, okay, Tim, it's your turn, you preach the gospel this time. And he'll get up and preach the gospel, and then the teachers will be grading you the whole time. And they'll say, well, you weren't very clear with this, and you made a mistake with this, and whatever it might be. But in the meantime, people are getting saved all over the place, and that's the kind of thing that they do. And then the teachers, the rest of the 3 weeks, the teachers at the Bible school, then each one pastors their own church, by the way. So they have their own church to care for, but then during that 3-week period when they're not in school, they go out to visit the students, and they visit the students and check up on them, see how they're doing, and help them out, give them some counsel in their pastoral ministry and so forth. But that's Faith Bible School. Sunrise School is our primary school. We have, it's like the equivalent of preschool to about grade 7 or 8. And we have 272, I think was the last count, students that are in the school right now. We've had as many as just over 300. I remember when there was 40, but we have all these students now, and they come to the school and they stay there. We have 2 dormitories. We've had a dormitory built, and I think Will and Zach and Frank and some of the others built some bunk beds and some cubbies, some storage things there, and did all this work in there. And then the government said, well, the way that was is one big building, and then put a wall in the middle, and the boys on this side and the girls on that side. And now the government's decided, which is a good thing, I agree with it, it's a good idea. They said, you know what, you have to have the boys and the girls in separate buildings. And so that meant we had to have another building for the students that stay in the dorm. About half of the students, almost half the students now are dormitory students. They come from too far away. There's no buses or there's no transportation. The children walk to school, and they walk a long ways. Those that from here that have been there could tell you that early in the morning, what usually wakes you up is not an alarm clock, but it's children. And you hear children coming, but while it's still dark outside, they come walking, and you hear them walking, and they're singing on their way to school. They can't wait to get to school. And they come down and they're there. And anyway, so at the school we feed the students. All the students get 2 meals. The students that are in the dormitories have 3 meals during the day. And the dormitories now, so because the government standards, and by the way, the government is getting much more involved in all of this. The government in that district of Uganda was really pleased with what they saw when they came to inspect Sunrise School. And so they made it a testing center for all the other schools. When they get through the what do they call it? Primary 7, isn't that what they call it, Zach? Right? When they finish primary 7, before they go on to secondary school, they have to pass a test. And the government comes, and the government sends them all to a central location, and they set up all this testing with students from other schools and so forth, and then they have to pass the test in order to be enrolled in secondary school. And because the Sunrise School tested so well, and because the facilities are a different sort of standard, they've asked Sunrise School to be a testing center. So instead of having to pay for the students to go to their test, the government pays the school to allow all the other students to come and be a testing center. Not a lot, but at least it relieves all of those families from having to pay for those tests. And it's really neat to see that, and it's encouraging to see the impact of that. I'll give you a testimony from the last graduation. I think we've heard it about 3 times now at graduations from the Bible school. The representative would be the equivalent of your state representative. Comes to graduation, and he came to graduation, the last one that I attended. He came and gave a wonderful testimony. He's born again. He's a wonderful man of God, and he came and he was telling the pastors, especially as they graduated, about their responsibility to their communities, to take care of the communities and so forth. And he was talking about how wonderful it is to see how not only Sunrise School was there, Now Faith Bible School is there, so all these pastors are being trained, being given an education. The children are healthier, and the health care has so improved in that area. There's not nearly so much sickness and everything. The children are all healthier, the families are healthier, and they're getting an education, and and he talked about all these differences that makes. And it made me think, do you know, that's what happens because Christian people live a different way, don't we? I mean, we behave differently, we act differently, we avoid certain things that should be avoided and so forth. But the level of alcoholism is a big problem over there when they can get alcohol. And I don't understand this. Pastor, maybe you can explain this to me. How in the world people can't afford to get food, but they can always manage to get, anyway. But that's just, it hasn't disappeared, but it's just all changed. And he was talking about the difference that they see in that village and now in the villages right around because of all that. Now, we never planned any of that. It's not on our worksheets anywhere. We just tried to teach Christian values to these kids coming through the school, and that's been the result. The community has changed as a result of that. But so we have 2 dormitories. We just finished the second one, which is the girls' dormitory. That's just been completed. I haven't even seen it yet. I just have seen some pictures of it, but that's just completed. The teachers that teach at the school, they haven't formed a union yet, but they just received their first raise in pay in 11 years. I say 11 years because that's the time that I've been doing that work with them, and we've been, to my shame, it never occurred to me about that. We just send a certain amount of monthly support there for the school, and the teachers are paid and so forth. And then when we realized that they're getting the same pay they did 10 years ago, 11 years ago by the time we got it all sorted out. And so now one of the teachers, Agnes, she now gets the whopping amount of money. For her monthly salary now is $70 a month. And that's what she gets, and she's just so delighted. She never dreamed that she could be making that much money. But anyway, that's the teacher. So anyway, let's see, where am I here? Okay, I wanted to tell you about that. The multi-purpose building, we built a building there, a large, very large building, because we wanted a place when the weather's bad for the students to be able to go eat inside instead of having to sit out underneath a thatched roof or a tarp or something like that and take turns eating their meals and so forth. And their kitchen is outside. But now we have this big room, so we have a place where they could eat inside and where they could have assemblies and have chapel and have those sorts of things. So we have this big building, and now it's used for the school very often, and the Bible school uses that. And now every once in a while they'll have a conference where they'll invite all the people from around the area to come in and listen, and some of the pastors at the school or some of the area pastors will do that, or they'll have what they call a youth conference. Youth in Uganda is anyone who is out of school. Think that it would be about 16 or 18 years old maybe, but from the time you finish school until the time you get married, you're considered a youth. So some of the youth at a youth conference might be 30, 35 years old, but they're still considered a youth, right? And so they have youth conferences now at the school in this great big building. They use everything. If they have a building, they'll find a use for it, and they'll use it over and over and over, and that's what goes on there as well. The government also had some other interesting requirements. I think that you've seen some of the pictures of the bathrooms. It's a very nice outhouse. And so it's about the best way I can describe it. And the government said, with that many children in one area, that's not really good enough. Now, it's always been good enough before. I mean, good enough for the government anyway. But now they're starting to pay attention more to in the villages. So they say, you've got to improve that. So, and we say, okay, well, that's a good idea. That seems reasonable. So now we have bathrooms with running water. We have toilets that flush. It's just like being at home, except that somebody still has to go up on top and dump water into the barrel on top so that you have running water down below. So, okay, so those are cool kind of things. We started an agriculture project for pastors. So the pastors, they take an offering. You should have have Will and Zach show you how they do offerings next Sunday. That because the way they do offerings is they take a great big basket and they set two of them up front. And I still don't know after all these years why there's two. And when you go to put money in the offering basket, you don't just put it in one. You put some in one and some in the other one. And do you know what the difference is? Yeah, something like that. Pastor Henry did one time was for the building, so they do that, and these people don't have any money. So the pastor's basket, the pastor's pay from the church, maybe would be the equivalent of maybe $2 a week, $1 or $2, literally, because they have a few shillings, and that's all they have to put in the offering. But don't they give joyously? They give everything. They give as much as they can, and when they start doing it, somebody starts playing some music, and they dance all the way up to the front of the church, and they put that money in, and they stop and they pray, and that's almost the highlight of the service. I mean, it's an exciting part of the whole thing. So, because they're really excited to be able to give, even though it's just that little bit. So, that's what you would do, right? I mean, because we're all so excited to put money in the offering. Doesn't work at home church either. I can't. Anyway, I'm just kidding you a little bit. So we started this project because we're the pastors. So the pastors, because they have nothing. I mean, literally, they don't get a salary per se from the church, and so forth. So sometimes people in the church will give the pastor if they have an extra thing of bananas or things like that. But the pastors have to feed their families by growing their own gardens. And they grow their own gardens, and that's how they do it. And it's not that they mind doing it, but if you have to do that all the time, you don't have much time for ministry. And especially in a place like that where a good percentage of the people in your congregation, which isn't very large, granted, but still most of them either can't read or don't have a Bible to read or not sure where to read. And so the pastors will go from house to house and read scripture and pray with the people and do that sort of thing, and let alone doing the open air evangelism and stuff. So we did this pilot project, and we got somebody gave us $1,500 to start this project. And so what we've done is we said, okay, well, we selected 5 pastors, and of those 5 pastors, we gave each of them $300. And with the $300, that's enough money for them to rent an acre or two, to lease an acre or two of land for a year, buy some seed, have the land cleared, hire somebody to help cultivate that acre of land. It's all done, most of it's almost always done by hand, and to plant the crops and harvest the crops. And all that together cost about $300 to get started. They can grow 2 crops a year in a good year. So 2 crops of corn, maize, or something similar to that. They can grow, if they get 2 crops in, then this was the idea. We give them that $300 we gave to them for seed money to see whether that idea would actually work. So now we're in the 2nd year of that, and the pastors we're at the end of the 1st year of that, just starting the 2nd year of that, and those 5 pastors now they have harvested their first crops, their second crop, most of them. There's one exception to that. And then what they've done is they've made enough money from that when they sell the corn or the coffee or whatever it is that they're growing. They have sold that, and they took the money, and that's enough money to buy seed for the next year, enough money to pay the lease for the land, enough money to buy a little bit of fertilizer, and to pay all their own expenses from that first crop. And so the second crop is theirs to take care of their family. And we just wanted to see if that would actually work, and it worked really well. And I was looking for it, and I got sidetracked this afternoon, but I was trying to find the email. Pastor Henry, who was, just a wonderful man of God. Pastor Henry is one of the ones that we helped out with that, and he used it he already had a small field of coffee trees, bushes that he grows. He bought some more of that and then some more corn with that. And he's doing very well, and he sent us a thing telling how many pounds he got of all that stuff, and so it's working out really well. So what our hope is, we're hoping to, at some point, to be able to expand that and try to find a way to do that that's reasonably fair. It's always difficult to know because you have to be careful not to be showing favoritism, you know, to one over the other, and they're happy and they're glad for, like, these pastors to have received that help, but then they always also sort of wonder, oh, wonder why I didn't get picked. That's pretty human, isn't it? And we can't help them all, but we want to try to do what we can. Some of them don't really need quite so much, but anyway, it's worked out really well, and it enables them, the pastors, then to be able to have more time for them to put into the ministry. And nobody's getting rich off the whole thing, and it's just a one-time gift that we give to them, but they know how to use it and they do it, and they're also learning how to be very accountable, because they have to show the receipts and everything for the seeds and for everything that they buy and all that they do with all that sort of thing. So one other thing that I think I mentioned the last time that I was here about the water project, so we have this well that was not only humbled me, because somebody asked me about drilling a well in the village one time, and I said, there's no way you could drill a well. You can't get equipment in on those roads. And anyway, of course, I make a statement like that. What does somebody do? They find a way to get equipment out and drill a well. But they drilled this well, which is wonderful, and the well it's nonstop, and we get this fresh, clean water out of this well, and all the surrounding people in the village come there and fill up their containers with water out of this well. The school gets fresh, clean water out of the well. It just takes care of it, and it's just nonstop. You just can't use it all up. And so Paul Masigua came up with this idea about what if we bottled water? And because one of our concerns is that we always want to make the ministry over there be as self-sustaining as possible. We don't want to create a dependence on us. We want to make it self-sustaining as much as we can. So they've decided, here's what we could do with some help, and then we're able to help them to do this, that we got the equipment. Actually, it was shipped from India to Uganda, Uganda is a landlocked country, so that was a challenge getting it all there. But they got the equipment, they built a little warehouse type place to hold all this, and we started bottling water. And then they take it into the trading centers, and they're going to take it into the trading centers. As of right now, people from the trading centers come to the village and buy bottled water from them. And so that's been a major project, and the idea of that is the profit from selling that water will go into supporting the school, Faith Bible School and Sunrise School. And so that lessens the dependence upon us, and it allows us to then expand into other ministries in the same area, such as helping some of the churches to actually have a building that they could meet in and that sort of thing. But the water project, and that all came about from special funding. None of that was from what we call our general fund or the Sunrise School Fund or the Faith Bible School Fund. That was all donations, gifts that were given from people who were able to do that and liked that idea and were kind of excited about it. And so Paul told me the problem that they have right now is that they ran out of the plastic bottles and the labels have to be specially printed because the government requires information to be on the label, and they have to have an identification of where it came from and everything, and it has to be tested. When the government tested the well, I don't know the terminology, I always get it confused, but when they tested the well, they said in order to do this, you have to be able to produce a certain amount of water in a certain time. And so they run the water from the well until for like 12 hours, and then they wait for the recovery period to see how the water table comes back up. They ran it for 12 hours, it didn't drop the water table at all. And it just kept going and going. And then when they finally said, okay, we quit. There's no point in testing in that anymore. And then they tested the quality of the water and all that sort of thing, and they said it's real remarkably clean water. They didn't have to do they have to filter it, but they don't have to do any filter to get stuff out of the water. They don't have to add anything to it. The water's, it's clean by all those standards. So we were real pleased with all of that. So those so now the original, we bought 5,000 bottles, just the size when you go and get a bottle of water. And they filled those 5,000 bottles, and they have to go through this whole process, and they cap them and seal them in plastic and do all of that. So there are 20 people in the village, in that same village, who now have employment. They're not getting rich again, but they have a job, and they actually come and work a few hours, and they get paid for that. So that helps the economy of the whole area. And then they've sold all of those bottles of water already very quickly once they started production. And Paul told me the other day that they have requests for 1,650 more from the training center that's right there in Kabali. And the plan is to expand that beyond that. Again, not that we're interested in having a business, but it's a way for them on their own to be able to sustain the expenses that they have there, improve their health care in the area, because there's a little medical clinic there, and so forth, that they want to. The government built it. Sound familiar? Government built it and then left it. And so it's just sitting there. And first they sent a nurse out there once in a while to it, and then they decided that was either too hard or too expensive, or nobody wanted to go, or whatever it may be. So they're trying to get help with the expenses of that, to put the stuff in there that's needed and all that kind of thing. So as a result of those things that I'm telling you, those are sort of the foundational things that are going on over there. As a result of that, we have now these pastors' conferences. When we go over there, we typically have, like I mentioned before, the conference with pastors. We bring them all from different areas together, and then we do a couple days worth of teaching as much as we can. Since we've not been able to go over there it's been a couple of years now, we've not been able to go over there. So now what the pastors themselves from the Bible school again, and the teachers of the Bible school, and some of the other pastors who have already graduated, now they're holding these conferences. So the pastors' alliances, we go to a certain area, and we'll say like Waterville district, Waterville area or something, we'll go to a large area, and we'll work with the different pastors of these little churches, and we encourage them to work together. They form what they call an alliance of pastors, and in order to be part of the alliance, they go through this teaching, and there's a statement of faith, there's a basic doctrinal statement, and they have to adhere to that, and they agree to that, and they agree to be accountable to one another. They don't interfere with the other pastor's ministry, but they do have this, they work together in that sense. Then if there's a church here and there's a church down the road a ways, in the next village over, but in between there's no church. And so the alliance will say, hey, let's work on this. We'll start doing some open air evangelism, whatever we can do. We'll go house to house, and we'll try to get a church started. So there's a church in each village is the goal. And so the alliance of pastors will all work together to do that, and then they'll try to find a pastor to go there. And so it's when I say alliance, it sounds a little scary, because I belong to a pastor's fellowship, but we don't have an alliance. It's like a denomination, only not a denomination, because they're autonomous, each church, but they're helping each other all the time. And it's built a wonderful unity among the churches. It's served as a corrective thing to make sure that the right kind of doctrine is being taught and so forth. And so and then when the pastors get discouraged, as they very quickly do and easily do, often do over there, as you can imagine, then the pastors have someone else to go and talk to and get some encouragement and some help. And when they're having difficulty and the pastor's not sure what to do, he has some others that he can counsel with that will help him out to do all of those kind of things. So so they have these conferences and evangelistic efforts that they do, and they do all of these things together as an alliance in these certain areas. So now we have 7 alliances, and a total of just a little over 300 churches that are amongst the 7 different alliances. The total number is that. So it's a wonderful thing, though, to see what they do and how they function and what they've been doing in the time. They now say, well, this is what we did when the team from America came, so let's try to do that. And so they would choose one of the pastors to do some teaching, and they'll get everybody together that they can, and that pastor will do some teaching and so forth, and just encourage all the churches and do that sort of thing. So as I said earlier, the students from Faith Bible School, they go out with their teachers. They'll go out in those different areas and do that very same kind of thing. And so we're getting near, I think, to the point to where if we could enlarge Faith Bible School a little bit to start adding some classes and some that are not yet pastors, but would like to be or seem to have that kind of propensity and are appropriately gifted to be able to expand that a little bit, that would help with that as well. But it just keeps growing and growing and growing. I mean, first time I went, first group of pastors that I met with, there were 12 of them. And now there's 300 of them. Not by my doing, of course, but what I'm saying is that's how it has grown. And the needs there are just they just keep going and going. Another new thing we never expected to happen, in some of the places, like in the town of Lucaya, and in some of the trading centers even now, where the government is trying to put electricity out into some of these areas. And they have electricity. Now we have electricity all the way to Sunrise School. Sunrise School and Faith Bible School are the only ones that use it because they don't have a house that's wired. There's no, I mean, so you have electricity going right by your house, but your house, there's not a wire in your house. What are you going to do, right? So we had started a few years ago buying a few solar panels that they could have a light bulb and maybe charge a cell phone or something like that. But now, so those things are coming. I have mixed feelings about all that, by the way. I'm kind of a pioneer spirit, I guess, that I think we go back to the pioneer days, we'd all be better off. I say that. I have a cell phone in my pocket that I get internet and Facebook and all that stuff on there. But so all that to tell you, so what's one of the results of this is cell phones over there are very common. They're not real expensive and they're very common, and you don't subscribe to a monthly service, but rather you buy minutes. And you buy units, I guess. Anyway, that's the way that it works. And so they get some, and so for certain times of the month, they have a little bit of change, and they go and they get one of these little scratch-off things, and they put the number in their phone, and then they can send messages, and they can do that sort of thing. So I get very often, I mean, a week never goes by anymore without getting some request from one of the pastors over there will say, I don't understand this verse. Can you explain to me what this verse means? Or what should we do about this situation, this circumstance? And somebody came along and told us about this doctrine, and it doesn't seem right. What do you think about that? So we're doing all of this correspondence now back and forth. And it's gone from that. When they found out there were people who could help them that way, so now what they've started doing is they go to Paul Masigua, who is our director over there. I think you've met Paul. So they'll get messages to him, and whenever he goes out to the village, they'll give him a whole list of things. And so he'll send the list to me. And I answer the easy ones and send the rest of them to my brother and my nephew. So, but it's been, I'm just saying by that again, the ministry is expanding, and when they start asking those kind of questions, that's a really good sign. They're careful now about what's being taught, and they want to see it, and they don't take my word for it anymore. Used to be, Pastor Bob says it, that's it. That's like the law. But now they say, well, where's that in the Bible? So, yeah, that's a good thing, right? So anyway, you can imagine what a blessing that is to have those kind of things happen. So a couple other things real quick. There's situational things that they deal with, just like we do here, that they often need help with. And the teachers at the school, Pastor Grace, he teaches, I think we call it, it's like pastoral theology. But he's the one that teaches this part at the Bible school. And so he'll talk to them about pastoring, about dealing with different situations in the church. As you can imagine, unlike here, there are some churches that have problems from time to time, and so they want to know how to deal with it. And so they want to know those things. So now what they do, every time I hear from Pastor Grace, it's, here's the questions that I'm struggling with trying to answer for my students, But you see what a blessing that is? That's my point of all that, is that they really want to know, what does God have to say about these things? And that just blesses me so much. I just love to hear that from them. And when it gets a little overwhelming, there are men in my church that I go to them and say, hey, will you deal with this one, and have them write up some quick little things. You have to do it carefully, not just to have the right doctrine to have the right answer, but you have to do it in simple terms and brief enough because of the whole way that we communicate. But a lot of neat things like that are happening. I have been very careful over the years about giving out my email address when I'm over there, or even a phone number or anything like that. I don't respond to every Facebook friend that I get from somebody in Uganda, and it's really hard sometimes not to do that. But once you start doing that, then you start hearing from a lot of people who need money for this or need money for that. And I will tell you, apart from the ones who just see an easy way to get some money, there are very real, genuine needs that they have. And it just breaks your heart because there's no way that you could meet all their needs, and you just can't do all that. So we have to be careful about things like that. So you might have some questions for me. Let me do this. I wanted to tell you about some of the needs that we have, okay? One of the things the biggest need right now that we have is we need your prayers for wisdom. I'm going to tell you, I love being a pastor of a church. I don't know very much about being a pastor of a church. I know even less about being the director of a mission like this. I'm in over my head all the time. And I would appreciate it if you'd pray for me for wisdom in not only directing the mission, but dealing with all of those things over there and with all the people that I work with. Because they're not only when we go over there, but all the in-between stuff and the things like making arrangements for trips and that sort of thing, making decisions about finances. And boy, my faith has been tested greatly, because when we started doing this, we said, well, you know what, we have opportunity, we'll tell people about the needs, and we'll trust God to supply the needs. And he has. I tell you, he has done that right along. And he never fails. And he does that. But when you watch, my treasurer, bless her heart, our church treasurer is also the treasurer for the mission, right? And when she comes and I say to her, hey, we need to send this much money over, to wire this money over there for a certain thing, she said, Pastor, that will take everything that we have. Okay, then what do? You say, well, we need to save X number of dollars to make sure next month we have to send to the school to pay the teachers? Or how do you juggle those kind of things? And I'm just trying to explain to you that there are those kind of decisions that I really struggle with, because I just want to trust God. I just want to say, whatever, we'll just do it and God will take care of it. But I want to be responsible. And so there's always that, does that make sense? Don't tell anybody I'm not very good at this, because I want everybody to think I know exactly what I'm doing. How much do we keep expanding the ministry? As I've said, the need there is, again, for wisdom to know what to do with all of that, because there's never an end to the need. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. And I think, okay, how much can we handle? How much should we try to do? How much can we be effective in doing when it just keeps growing and expanding all by itself? And we don't have any plan for expansion. We never have had. We just go do the thing that's right in front of us, and God just keeps doing this to us. He keeps, and so there's more and more churches, more and more pastors, more and more people, more and more opportunities, and they're there, and they're making a difference in people's lives, and we're thrilled with that. But I don't know you can't control it. Does that make sense? Just trying to get your arms around that to know, you need wisdom to know what to do next, whether it's, and the pastors will, you see the conditions that they meet in, the buildings that they meet in, that are just, some of them are just deplorable. They're horrible. And when you go to church and they're all excited, but you go into their church facilities and you're standing your feet in the mud, trying to preach, and you're watching the people come in and out, and they're sitting on these little benches or on the dirt floor or something, and it's just, and they're not complaining, but I'm complaining, Lord, why do they have to be in this kind of condition? And what, should we help them more? Should we not? They have a thatched roof, and you get everything from occasional snake will drop out of it, or maybe a bat, and very often rain will come down through it, and you think, we should put some metal roof on that building for them, right? And so I'm not kidding when I say that. One of the things that we were going to do if we would have been there in November, we would have had poor old Zach and his crew out there putting a roof on the Hand of God Church, right? And how do you put never mind, that's a whole nother. But so just what I'm asking you to do is pray for all of us, just to know, to have the wisdom to know how much to do. Do you just stay with one and do everything you can for that one, or do you do a little bit for all of them, or how many do you try to do, and so forth? And so it's just hard to know, honestly, how much to do with all of that. I don't know how much you have observed or had opportunity to observe about churches in our own country and churches in our own areas that are struggling. And sometimes it's because of some kind of conflict or something. Sometimes it's because of the thing like COVID. Sometimes it's because of things I don't even understand. But there are churches there are churches that are like half the people that there used to be. And that means their income is half, and they're still trying to sustain their own budget. And so the money that they used to give toward missions or missionaries in general, that ends up dropping off. And so should we expand? How do we expand our donor base, as they say? How do we do that? And we don't have anyone. We don't have any full-time people with Hope and Mercy Mission. We have some sort of crazy people like myself who just run all over the place and doing whatever. And I pastor a church, and that's my first responsibility. And I'm not complaining, mind you, when I say that. I'm just saying I'm at the end of my wisdom to know how to manage all of this, especially the bigger that it gets. Mind you, just in my defense, the first time I went to Uganda, I went because I asked Paul, what's it like for the churches and the pastors over there? And he said to me, Pastor, you just have to come and see for yourself. And so I went for that one purpose. I just wanted to see what it was like. He trapped me. Tricked me into the whole thing. Okay. Anyway, so so what needs do we have? Funding is always a need, that sort of thing. I think I call it a need. I'd like to see more people go. I appreciate that those of you from here who have come and helped us over there. I would like to see all of the churches, there aren't very many, but all the churches that support Hope and Mercy Mission, I would love it if somebody from each one of those churches would come on a trip, a missions trip. And it's one of the things that I'm asking the Lord for. I'd like to see more pastors go to see what they can do over there and all of that sort of thing. I would like for your pastor to go with me over there sometime, but the guy doesn't have any time at all for anything. And, well, you have time to go to Uganda. You should take a vacation. If I got a deal for you. Anyway, so do you have questions I can answer? Yes. If you go in the store and you buy a bottle of water, that's about this big. It's like that. I should have brought one for you to show you, but
16 ounce.
Yeah, they're no more than 16 ounce, but they're about that size. Oh yeah, no, that's a possibility, but I don't know if we'll ever get to that point, but I kind of hope not. I hope it's not necessary, but right now it's just, like the individual sized water. If you go into the trading center, water is a real problem in Uganda. And so in these trading centers that you have, you can go and you can buy a bottle of water. Do you remember, Will, how much they cost?
I don't know that. 1,000 shekels, I think.
What's that?
1,000, I think.
About 1,000 shillings? Yeah, which is about,
50 cents.
yeah, about 30 cents, I think, right now at the exchange rate. So, that's what it would cost to go buy one at a trading center or something. But that's what we're talking about, just that. There are people who come that live right close by, who come to the well in the village, and they come and fill up their containers. This is usually what they do is they get their water by taking the most common thing you see is a lot of about a 4-liter jug, big, well, maybe more than that, isn't it? But about a 4-gallon, I would say, plastic jug, and they take it down and dip it out of the swamp or wherever they can find any water. So now they bring that down to the well and they fill that up, but we don't charge them for that. Of course, they get that for free. But so, any other questions? Either I did so good explaining all that, or I've thoroughly confused you. So it's a wonderful ministry, it really is, and I praise God for it, literally every part of it, and it brings great joy to people. Yes?
I just have an observation. When you start a project like this, you've been at it for 11 years and it just keeps growing and growing. What are the opportunities to start turning more of the responsibility over to the indigenous people, and really good leaders that show themselves
Right.
worthy of taking on more responsibility
Yeah.
and backing away and letting them start to experience what you and your crew have experienced.
Yeah.
Working and just allowing it to expand. It just makes it more local.
Sure. Yeah, and that's our goal always in all of these, the whole big picture, the whole thing. We're not trying to build one ministry there. We're trying to help all the individual church. I'm a strong believer in local church. And so, it's the local church in each village that we want, and we want to get them to that point of being self-sustaining and also, able to do just what you're saying. So we don't have any authority over any of the churches. We don't tell any of them what to do. We teach them, we counsel them as they ask, and they're beginning to be, they're really, there's a nucleus there, I would say, that's just beginning now to be able to do pretty much everything on their own. The financial aspect is a little different and all that. The school, it's just, there's never been any way for the school, either school, to be self-supporting financially until now. Now we're looking at, I expect that I think our projections are by 2025 that we think that the water project will pay for Sunrise School and Faith Bible School completely. Their month-by-month expenses, assuming that both schools stay at the same level they are right now. If they grow, then maybe, but something like that. So that's what we're actually trying to do. The difficulty with that is every time we go over there, the circle expands a little bit wider, and so that where we start right here, they do very well with that. You turn over most of that to them, and they're doing well with it. They still need some help along the way, but not so much. But the further you get out in the other area, we had a man come to one of our conferences, and he came to me to talk to me, and he said he was from Gomba. I don't have any idea what's Gomba. I don't know what that is. It turns out it's a whole nother region way over there. You remember the genocide in Rwanda that you heard about? The people who fled Rwanda during that genocide, the government of Uganda said, yeah, you can have this area to settle in, and you can go there. They're what they call cattle keepers. Instead of farmers, they raise cattle for the most part. So they gave them all this area, and it's Gomba, this whole region over there. Well, this man came and he said, we really need help in Gomba. Will you come over there and help us? And I said, yes. And I told Paul and Pastor Henry, we got to go to Gomba. They just looked at me like I was crazy, which not the first time that's happened. But and they're saying, we can't. It's too far. Well, how far is it? Well, it'll take us all day to drive up there to get there, and then we won't have any time to do any teaching or get to the pastors. And I said, well, so we'll stay overnight there. Well, where are we going to stay overnight? Well, we'll sleep in one of the churches. But there's got to be a way to do it. Partly because I promised them, and partly because when somebody comes and asks you, will you come to our village? Will you come to our area and help us? We really need some help. And anyway, so now we've got this whole new area of Gomba. And so that's the kind of thing that keeps happening. And that's what I was saying. I don't know. Wisdom now, I think, wisdom sort of, on my part, requires me sometimes to say, well, maybe, or I'm not, or I'll find out before I say yes, that sort of thing. So I've gotten us into trouble several times, but because it just, when you're in the situation, Pastor, you know what that's like when somebody calls on the phone and says, Pastor, I really need to talk to somebody. And you say, well, I can't, my schedule's full. But you make time, right? You just, as much as you can anyway. So, but yeah, no, that's good, Tim, you're right. And that's what we're trying to do in the whole thing. But that's why I say, if you would pray for us for wisdom. The elders of my church in Plymouth are the board of directors for Hope and Mercy Mission, and we need your prayers for that very thing, because they always say, Pastor, be careful this time when you go over there. Don't promise things don't promise beyond what you should. And I don't know. It's just, but you talk to some of the people that have been there, and they'll tell you, how do you say no? So, do you know Dave Burns? Well, I always use him as an example, because when he went with us to Uganda, it was the funniest thing. Dave Burns, he went over there, and we met with a group of pastors and so forth, and so we're talking to all of them, and Dave's looking around there, and he sees some of them that are hiking up their britches, and they've got a piece of rope tied around them, and so he took off his belt and he gave it to one of them. And then he saw one of them didn't have any shoes, and he took off his shoes, and he gave him his shoes to them. He took off his watch, and he gave somebody his watch, and he's seeing all these people, they don't have a pen or a pencil, so he picks here, and he gives them his Maine State Police pen, rather. He gave that away. We got that back, but and by the time he's done, he said, Dave, you really need to stop, because I'm not taking you back if you're just still in your underwear. That's there's got to be a limit. But but that's what, and I've seen Zachary do that more times than you know what I mean by that. But it's hard to know, and it's hard even when you know you shouldn't, and know it may not be the wisest thing to do. But so for all of that, I would like to. I think it would be helpful for us if we could have a team from here go a little more often. Like maybe right now we usually go in the fall of the year. We take a large team and we do a lot of different ministries, and in the spring. Usually it's primarily to minister directly to the pastors instead of the other work. It would be wonderful if we could have another team go at another time during the year, to do some of the other work as well, especially with the individual churches. We had planned this time to go over there. It's time for me to quit. We had planned this time when we went over there. Have you ever seen the Jesus Bible Storybook? It's a wonderful little children's storybook. I was enamored by it. They caught me when they had the little catchphrase from it, where they talk about the Bible, where every page whispers his name, talking about the name of Jesus. It's a wonderful storybook, and it's got a curriculum that goes with it. And we were using it for our junior church. So we bought, 30 or 40 copies of that, and we're going to take it over there, and we are going to go over, and some of our teachers were going to go with us and go over and teach them how to use that and help them start building like a Sunday school type program doing that. They do that with the Operation Christmas Child, the Greatest Gift booklet that goes in the shoeboxes, and then there's the Discipleship, the Greatest Journey, which, have you ever seen that? That's a wonderful, wonderful resource. So they have that in the Luganda language over there. So they're starting the equivalent of a Sunday school, teaching children, and to have another team go, we would need somebody else. I can't go 3 times a year. My church gets too used to me being gone. I'll be in real trouble. So anyway, all right. So any other questions? And I'll quit talking. That's what's going on. The ministry it's a good ministry, and it's going very well. We have some obstacles to overcome. Ironically, most of them on this side, not on that side. But things are going well. God has been supplying for the needs all along, with people, with finances, with everything. And there's always room, always opportunity for more, opportunities for people to go on trips. There's just no end to the open door for effective service, as Paul put it in Corinthians. So we appreciate your prayers very much for that. And again, I thank you for your participation in the mission.
Well, that was perfect. Thank you. You go to the foyer.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Sure.
Zach, close the perfect.
Any others? Praise you for the effective door you've given us. Lord, we pray we continue to step through it. Continue to this trajectory. Lord, grant wisdom, give us ministry wisdom. And in Jesus' name, amen.
Good evening, folks. Good night.